My name is Hazel Thompson, and I'm 28 years old. Standing outside my childhood home that autumn evening, I never expected to hear the words that would shatter everything I believed about family loyalty. Through the slightly open window, my parents' voices carried clearly into the crisp October air. "It's better if Hazel doesn't come to Derek's wedding. She'll just embarrass us like always," my mother Linda said with a dismissive laugh. My father Robert's deep voice agreed, "Stephanie's right. Every family event turns into a disaster when Hazel's around." That was the moment I realized my own family had been planning to exclude me from the most important day of my brother's life. Before we dive into this story of betrayal and revenge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever felt excluded by your own family, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of standing up against family manipulation. Now, let's uncover how deep this conspiracy really went. The confrontation that followed my eavesdropping changed everything between us forever. I walked through that front door with my heart pounding, demanding answers from the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My parents Robert and Linda Thompson sat in their matching recliners, looking caught but not apologetic. "Hazel, you don't understand the pressure we're under," my mother began, her perfectly manicured fingers fidgeting with her pearl necklace. "Every family gathering, something goes wrong when you're there." The evidence they presented felt overwhelming at first. At my college graduation party 3 years ago, a sudden thunderstorm had ruined the outdoor celebration they'd planned. The following Christmas, their kitchen caught fire during dinner preparation, filling the house with smoke and ruining the meal. During last summer's family reunion, the caterer they'd hired canceled at the last minute, leaving everyone scrambling for food. Each incident, they claimed, proved I was somehow cursed or careless. But as I listened to their litany of complaints, pieces of a different puzzle began forming in my mind. Derek, my older brother by 5 years, had been conveniently absent during my graduation storm, claiming a work emergency that never seemed to materialize. The Christmas kitchen fire had started from an electrical issue that Derek had been tinkering with earlier that day, yet somehow became my fault for distracting him. The reunion caterer had cancelled after receiving what they described as a concerning phone call about our family's payment history, though we'd paid in full months earlier. My parents revealed that Derek and his fiancée Stephanie had already booked a new venue for their wedding ceremony. The intimate garden location I'd heard them discussing for months had been abandoned for an exclusive country club that required a dress code I'd never been informed about. Every family member, every friend, every colleague had received updated invitations with the new location and time. Everyone except me. The first attack came swift and brutal. "Since you're so determined to be independent and question our decisions," my father announced, "we're cutting off your financial support completely. The monthly help with my graduate school tuition, the occasional assistance with my apartment rent, the safety net I'd relied on while building my freelance design career, all vanished in that moment." My parents had been supporting my education and career development for years, and now they wielded that generosity like a weapon. Derek arrived home just as the arguing reached its peak, his tall frame filling the doorway with an expression of perfectly practiced concern. "What's all the shouting about?" he asked, though something in his dark eyes suggested he already knew exactly what was happening. He made a show of defending me, telling our parents they were being harsh, but I caught the satisfied smirk he thought he'd hidden. "Hazel, you know you're always welcome at my wedding," he said with mock sincerity, "but maybe it's better if you don't come if you're going to be upset about the changes." That night, lying alone in my apartment that I could no longer afford, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out exactly what had been happening to my life, and I was going to fight back with everything I had. The call to my Aunt Margaret the next morning opened floodgates I never knew existed. Margaret, my father's younger sister, had always been the black sheep of the Thompson family, which suddenly seemed like a badge of honor rather than a burden. Her voice carried a weight of knowledge that had been building for years when she said, "Hazel, honey, I've been waiting for this conversation." Margaret revealed that Derek and Stephanie had been running a systematic manipulation campaign against me for nearly 2 years. It started small, with Stephanie making subtle comments about my appearance and behavior at family gatherings. She'd developed a talent for photographing me at unflattering moments, then sharing those images strategically to reinforce narratives about my supposed social awkwardness or inappropriate behavior. The technical sophistication of their campaign shocked me. Derek, with his background in graphic design, had been creating fake text message screenshots showing me saying things I'd never written. These doctored conversations portrayed me as jealous, vindictive, and unstable, and had been shared with extended family members as evidence of my deteriorating mental state. Stephanie had gone further, reaching out to my cousins and other relatives with carefully crafted stories about my supposed drug use, financial irresponsibility, and romantic scandals that existed only in her imagination. The first betrayal cut deeper than my parents' rejection. Courtney, my closest friend since high school, had been feeding information to Stephanie for months. Those intimate conversations where I'd confided my insecurities about family dynamics, my struggles with dating, my financial worries about graduate school, had all been recorded and passed along to my brother's fiancée. Courtney had installed recording apps on her phone, capturing our most private moments together and turning my vulnerabilities into ammunition. The second attack on my life came through my professional aspirations. I'd been interviewing for a prestigious position at a top marketing firm in the city, a dream job that would have launched my career and provided the financial independence I desperately needed. The final interview had gone perfectly, and the hiring manager had practically promised me the position. Then Derek made a phone call. Using his connections in the business world, my brother contacted the Human Resources Department with a fabricated story about my supposed history of workplace conflicts and unreliability. He presented himself as a concerned family member trying to protect a potential employer from making a costly mistake. The job offer that should have been mine disappeared overnight, replaced by a polite rejection letter citing concerns about my professional references. Aunt Margaret wanted to help, but her own position in the family remained precarious. "If I openly support you, they'll cut me out too," she admitted with genuine anguish in her voice. "But I can give you information, and I can be a safe place when you need one." Her house became my sanctuary and my base of operations for what was becoming an all-out war. The isolation felt complete that night. Everyone I'd trusted had either betrayed me or abandoned me, and my own family had revealed themselves as enemies I'd never seen coming. But isolation, I was beginning to learn, could also be clarity. When you have nothing left to lose, you can fight with a freedom that surprises everyone, including yourself. The discovery that Derek had stolen my creative work felt like a violation of something sacred between siblings. Going through old emails and project files, I found undeniable evidence that my brother had been systematically appropriating my design concepts and presenting them as his own work. Portfolio pieces I'd created for freelance clients, innovative marketing campaigns I'd developed for class projects, even personal art pieces I'd shared with family, had all been copied and claimed by Derek in his professional presentations. The theft went back years, predating his relationship with Stephanie, which meant this betrayal was purely his own invention. He'd built a significant portion of his career reputation on my stolen ideas, winning clients, and accolades that should have been mine. The realization that my own brother had been sabotaging my success while stealing my creativity felt like discovering he'd been poisoning my food while pretending to care about my health. Stephanie's influence had escalated Derek's natural selfishness into something more sinister and systematic. She contacted my landlord with carefully constructed lies about my reliability as a tenant, citing fabricated complaints from neighbors and invented stories about property damage I'd supposedly caused. The landlord, Mr. Peterson, had known me for 3 years without incident, but Stephanie's persistence and Derek's backing created enough doubt to trigger an eviction notice. The third attack came through our extended family's digital connections. Someone had gained access to our family WhatsApp group and sent messages claiming to be from me, announcing that I was cutting ties with everyone and wanted no further contact. These messages, sent while I was sleeping, portrayed me as unstable and hateful, citing grievances I'd never expressed and making threats I'd never consider. By morning, my phone was flooded with confused and hurt responses from relatives who believed I'd rejected them all. The second betrayal hit even harder than Courtney's treachery. Jessica, my college roommate and one of my oldest friendships, revealed under pressure that she'd been receiving payments from Stephanie for months. Her job was to spread carefully crafted stories about my college behavior, painting me as unstable, promiscuous, and academically dishonest to mutual friends and professional contacts. Jessica's guilt was evident, but her need for money had made her an easy recruit for Stephanie's campaign. My reputation in both professional and personal circles had been systematically destroyed over months of careful character assassination. Former classmates stopped responding to my messages. Potential networking contacts suddenly became unavailable. Even casual acquaintances began treating me with suspicion and distance, having heard whispered stories about my supposed problems and failures. The first moment I nearly gave up completely came when I discovered the final insult hidden in my grandmother's estate documents. Rose Thompson had died 2 years earlier, leaving what I'd been told was a small inheritance to be divided equally between Derek and me. The truth was far different. Grandmother Rose had left each of us $50,000, substantial nest eggs meant to help us establish our adult lives and pursue our dreams. Derek and Stephanie had been using my portion of the inheritance to fund their elaborate wedding and honeymoon plans. The legal documents showed forged signatures and falsified death certificates, a sophisticated fraud that had required professional assistance. My grandmother's final gift to me, money that could have secured my apartment, funded my education, and launched my business, had been stolen to pay for the wedding I was being excluded from. That night, sitting on my apartment floor surrounded by eviction notices and rejection letters, I felt the weight of complete defeat settling over me like a suffocating blanket. Every relationship I'd trusted had been corrupted, every opportunity I'd pursued had been sabotaged, and every family bond I'd cherished had been revealed as an illusion. The temptation to simply disappear, to move across the country and start over with nothing, felt like the only rational response to such total destruction. But somewhere in the depths of that despair, a different emotion began to emerge. Rage, pure and focused, started burning away the confusion and self-doubt that had paralyzed me for months. They had taken everything from me, but they had also shown me exactly who they really were. And now I was going to show them who I could become when I had nothing left to lose. The law office of Harrison and Associates felt like stepping into a different world where contracts and evidence mattered more than family loyalty or emotional manipulation. Mr. Harrison, my grandmother's estate attorney, had been waiting for someone to ask the right questions about Rose Thompson's will. His weathered face showed a mixture of relief and anger when I presented my suspicions about the inheritance fraud. "I've been concerned about these discrepancies for months," he admitted, pulling out a thick file that contained the original documentation. "Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes, and the paperwork I received after her death didn't match her intentions or her handwriting. The evidence was overwhelming. Derek had worked with someone skilled in document forgery to alter the will, reducing my inheritance to almost nothing while maximizing his own benefit. The legal implications were serious enough to result in criminal charges, but I needed more than just financial justice. I needed allies who understood the full scope of what Derek and Stephanie had been doing to my life." That's when Mr. Harrison mentioned Marcus, Derek's former business partner who had his own grievances with my brother's ethical flexibility. Marcus Chen agreed to meet me at a quiet coffee shop downtown, his nervous energy suggesting he had stories he'd been waiting to tell someone who would believe him. His partnership with Derek had ended abruptly 6 months earlier when Marcus discovered that Derek had been stealing client concepts and presenting them as collaborative work. "Your brother has a talent for making other people's successes look like his own," Marcus explained with bitter familiarity. The evidence Marcus provided painted Derek as a serial manipulator who had been refining his techniques for years. Before Stephanie entered the picture, Derek had been using subtler methods to undermine competitors and steal credit for collaborative work. Marcus had documentation of stolen presentations, falsified client testimonials, and manipulated project timelines that had cost their partnership several major contracts. My brother's pattern of behavior extended beyond family manipulation into systematic professional fraud. Marcus had been building a case for months, documenting Derek's violations of intellectual property laws and breach of contract agreements. His evidence, combined with my family's situation, created a comprehensive picture of someone who viewed other people's lives and work as resources to be exploited for his own advancement. Stephanie's first major counterattack came through a private investigator she'd hired to dig into my personal history. The PI had focused particularly on my therapy sessions following our parents' difficult divorce when I was 16. Those confidential medical records, illegally obtained, painted me as mentally unstable and potentially dangerous. The information was being shared selectively with family members and professional contacts to support narratives about my supposed psychological problems. The fourth assault on my stability came through a carefully orchestrated family intervention that felt more like a trial than a support meeting. My parents had gathered extended family members for what they described as an attempt to help me with my apparent mental health crisis. Uncle Peter, Aunt Marie, and several cousins sat in my parents' living room while Derek and Stephanie presented their evidence of my deteriorating condition. The private details of my therapy sessions were discussed openly, my supposed financial irresponsibility was documented with fabricated evidence, and my social isolation was presented as proof of dangerous psychological decline. The family members who had received those fake WhatsApp messages were convinced that I was experiencing a severe breakdown that required professional intervention and family supervision. The third and most devastating betrayal came from my cousin Brad, who had been my closest family relationship outside of the immediate household. Brad had been my confidant through childhood trauma, romantic disappointments, and career struggles. His support had meant more to me than any other family connection, which made his participation in the intervention feel like a knife through my chest. Brad revealed private secrets I had shared with him over years of trust. My struggles with anxiety during college, my complicated feelings about my parents' marriage, my insecurities about dating and professional success, all became ammunition in Derek and Stephanie's campaign to prove my instability. The cousin who had been my safe harbor in family storms had been recruited as another weapon against me. The stress of the intervention and the accumulation of betrayals triggered panic attacks severe enough to require hospitalization. The emergency room doctors treated my symptoms seriously, but the fact that I'd been brought in during a mental health crisis became another piece of evidence that Stephanie could use against me. Even my genuine medical needs were being weaponized to support their narrative about my supposed instability. Lying in that hospital bed, connected to monitors and surrounded by the sterile smell of institutional healthcare, I realized that I had reached the bottom of what they could do to me. Every relationship had been corrupted, every opportunity had been destroyed, every support system had been compromised. But hitting bottom, I was discovering, could also mean having a solid foundation to build from. The revenge I began planning from that hospital bed was not going to be emotional or impulsive. It was going to be systematic, comprehensive, and devastating. They had taught me how to be ruthless by being ruthless themselves. Now I was going to use those lessons against them with a precision that would leave them wondering how they had ever underestimated me so completely. Recovery from the hospital meant moving in with Aunt Margaret, whose modest suburban home became the headquarters for my campaign of systematic revenge. Margaret's spare bedroom, with its floral wallpaper and second-hand furniture, felt like a war room where I could finally plan without surveillance or sabotage. The isolation that had felt crushing before now felt like camouflage, allowing me to move unseen while my enemies celebrated what they thought was their final victory. The second ally I needed came through Stephanie's own camp. Sophie Martinez had been chosen as Stephanie's maid of honor based on their sorority friendship, but months of wedding planning had revealed sides of the bride that Sophie found increasingly disturbing. When Sophie reached out through a carefully worded Facebook message, I realized that Stephanie's manipulation extended beyond my family into her own social circle. Sophie's revelations about Stephanie's affair with Tyler, Derek's best man, provided the explosive evidence I needed to destroy their perfect wedding narrative. The relationship had been ongoing for months, conducted through secret phone calls, clandestine meetings, and elaborate cover stories that Sophie had unwittingly helped facilitate. Stephanie's wedding planning had been a performance designed to secure Derek's financial resources while maintaining her relationship with Tyler on the side. The photographic evidence Sophie provided was comprehensive and damning. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and social media check-ins painted a clear picture of Stephanie and Tyler's relationship timeline. More importantly, Sophie had recorded conversations where Stephanie discussed her plans to continue the affair after marriage, viewing Derek as a financial stepping stone rather than a life partner. Derek's business was facing financial difficulties that made the stolen inheritance money even more critical to their survival. His design firm had lost several major clients due to his reputation for stealing ideas and his inability to deliver original work under pressure. The elaborate wedding Stephanie had planned was consuming the last of their liquid assets, including money that legally belonged to me. My investigation into the wedding logistics revealed vulnerabilities I could exploit. The exclusive country club venue had strict policies about outside vendors and unauthorized guests, but their catering staff was managed through a third-party company that Sophie could help me infiltrate. The guest list included extended family members who had been turned against me through lies, but who might respond differently when presented with evidence of Derek and Stephanie's deception. Stephanie's second major counterattack came through an attempt to frame me for theft at Aunt Margaret's house. A family heirloom, a valuable antique necklace that had belonged to my great-grandmother, mysteriously disappeared during a family gathering that I had attended. The police report filed by my parents painted me as desperate enough to steal from the relative who had been helping me. The temporary arrest that followed felt like the lowest point in a campaign that had already destroyed most of my life. Sitting in a holding cell while Stephanie's false accusations were investigated, I realized that she was escalating beyond character assassination into criminal fraud. The charges were eventually dropped when Margaret's security cameras revealed that Derek had taken the necklace himself, but the damage to my reputation within the extended family was significant. The fifth and final direct attack on my life came through Derek's professional network. His colleagues at the marketing firms, graphic design companies, and creative agencies where I hoped to find work were systematically contacted with fabricated stories about my supposed criminal behavior, mental instability, and professional incompetence. The network I needed to rebuild my career was poisoned before I could even approach it. My countermove required professional help that I couldn't afford through conventional means. Detective Sarah Williams, a private investigator who specialized in family fraud cases, agreed to work with me on a contingency basis after reviewing the evidence I'd already gathered. Her expertise in background investigations and document analysis would provide the professional credibility my amateur detective work lacked. Detective Williams' investigation into Stephanie's personal history revealed patterns of behavior that went back years before her relationship with Derek. College roommates described systematic manipulation, identity theft, and emotional abuse that had destroyed several previous relationships. Former boyfriends had been subjected to similar campaigns of isolation and financial exploitation, though none had pursued legal action due to shame and social pressure. The evidence we were accumulating painted Stephanie as a sophisticated predator who targeted successful men with family money and professional connections. Derek was not her first victim, and based on her pattern of behavior, he would not be her last. The wedding we were planning to destroy was just another step in a career of emotional and financial fraud. The timing of my counterattack needed to be perfect to maximize the impact and minimize the chances of escape or damage control. The wedding reception, with its carefully curated guest list and formal atmosphere, would provide the ideal stage for revelations that would destroy not just the marriage, but the entire network of lies that supported it. Sophie's access to the venue and the catering staff would give me the technical support I needed to present evidence in a way that no one could ignore or dismiss. Everything was in place for a confrontation that would reveal the truth about my family's betrayal and expose the systematic fraud that had destroyed my life. The scared, isolated young woman who had been evicted and hospitalized was gone, replaced by someone who understood exactly how much damage careful planning and ruthless execution could accomplish. Derek and Stephanie had taught me to fight dirty, and now I was going to show them what I'd learned from their lessons. The morning of Derek's wedding dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect October day that photographers dream about and brides plan their lives around. The Willowbrook Country Club gleamed in the autumn sunlight, its manicured grounds and elegant architecture providing a backdrop that screamed old money and social status. 150 carefully selected guests would witness what they expected to be the social event of the season, unaware that they were actually attending the systematic destruction of everything Derek and Stephanie had built together. My infiltration of the catering staff had been flawlessly executed through Sophie's connections and Detective Williams' forged employment documentation. Dressed in the black uniform and white apron of the serving staff, I moved invisibly through the pre-ceremony preparations, listening to conversations and gathering final pieces of intelligence that would make my revelations even more devastating. The family dynamics I witnessed firsthand confirmed everything I had suspected about their true feelings toward me. Uncle Peter, who had always been kind to me during childhood, defended my absence to other relatives, saying Hazel's going through a difficult time, but she doesn't deserve to be completely cut out of family celebrations. His defense was immediately shut down by my parents, who repeated their carefully rehearsed narrative about my mental instability and disruptive behavior. Cousins and extended family members who had received the fake WhatsApp messages expressed concern about my supposed breakdown, while simultaneously sharing cruel jokes about my dramatic personality and attention-seeking behavior. The poisoning of my reputation had been so thorough that even relatives who genuinely cared about me had accepted the fictional version of my life that Derek and Stephanie had created. The pre-ceremony tension between Derek and Tyler provided unexpected entertainment as I moved through their preparation areas. Tyler's nervousness about standing next to the bride he was secretly sleeping with created obvious awkwardness that several groomsmen commented on. Derek's obliviousness to the affair happening directly under his nose would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic, especially given his supposed intelligence and manipulation skills. Stephanie's behavior during the morning preparations revealed the calculating coldness that I had only glimpsed during family gatherings. Her conversations with her bridesmaids focused entirely on the financial benefits of marriage to Derek, the social connections his family provided, and the lifestyle upgrades she anticipated. Love, commitment, and partnership never entered her discussions, which were recorded on the small device Detective Williams had provided. The private confrontation I had been planning took place in a quiet alcove near the men's dressing area, where Derek was adjusting his tie and practicing his wedding day smile. His surprise at seeing me was quickly replaced by the arrogant smirk I had grown to hate, as if my presence at his wedding was another victory he could claim over my humiliation. "I wondered if you'd show up after all the drama," Derek said with false concern that didn't match the satisfaction in his eyes. "I know this has been hard for you, watching me succeed while you struggle with your problems." His tone carried the practiced sympathy he'd perfected for family audiences, but the underlying cruelty was unmistakable when he thought we were alone. Derek's confession, when it finally came, exceeded even my expectations for cruelty and premeditation. "You want to know the truth, Hazel? This has all been planned since we were teenagers. You were always too smart, too creative, too everything, and it made me sick watching Mom and Dad praise you for things I could do better. Stephanie just helped me organize what I should have done years ago." Stephanie's arrival during our conversation provided the final pieces of evidence I needed. Her mask of bridal sweetness disappeared completely when she saw me, replaced by the vicious calculator who had orchestrated my social destruction. "You're even more pathetic than I thought, crashing our wedding like some desperate stalker. Security is going to love throwing you out in front of everyone." Their joint confession was more comprehensive than I had dared hope for. They detailed the systematic campaign against my reputation, the theft of my inheritance, the sabotage of my career opportunities, and their plans to completely isolate me from any family financial support or social connections. They spoke with the casual cruelty of predators discussing prey, as if my destroyed life was nothing more than a successful business venture. The recording device captured every word, every laugh, every detail of their conspiracy against me. But more importantly, it captured their absolute conviction that they had won completely and permanently. Their arrogance would make the upcoming revelation even more devastating, because they had no idea that their confession was being documented and prepared for public consumption. The ceremony itself proceeded with the kind of elegant formality that Stephanie had spent months planning and my parents had spent a fortune funding. Derek looked handsome in his tailored tuxedo, Stephanie was radiant in her designer gown, and the assembled guests provided the appropriate background of family pride and social approval. Everything was perfect for the destruction I was about to unleash. Standing in the back of the reception hall as dinner service began, I felt a calm that surprised me with its intensity. The scared, desperate woman who had been hospitalized and evicted was gone completely, replaced by someone who understood exactly what justice looked like and how to deliver it with maximum impact. The reception was about to begin, and with it, the final act of a war that Derek and Stephanie thought they had already won. The reception hall buzzed with the satisfied energy of a perfectly executed society wedding, crystal glasses chiming against china plates as guests settled into their assigned tables for an evening of celebration and social networking. The floral centerpieces Stephanie had agonized over for months provided elegant focal points for conversations about business partnerships, vacation plans, and family updates that would cement the social connections she had married to access. Tyler's best man speech provided an ironic opening act for the revelations that would follow. Standing at the microphone with nervous energy that several guests attributed to typical wedding day jitters, he delivered carefully rehearsed jokes about Derek's bachelor lifestyle and marriage readiness. The hypocrisy of Tyler celebrating a marriage he was actively betraying would become painfully obvious within the hour, but for now, the audience laughed and applauded his performance. The moment I had been planning for months arrived when the formal toasts concluded and the evening's entertainment was scheduled to begin. Walking to the front of the reception hall with the confident stride of someone who belonged there, I approached the microphone that had been left set up for announcements and special presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for a special presentation dedicated to the happy couple, I announced, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. The initial confusion in the audience was predictable, family members recognizing my voice but unable to reconcile my presence with the narrative they had been told about my exclusion from the celebration. The first recording I played was Derek and Stephanie's complete confession from earlier that day, their voices unmistakably clear as they detailed their systematic campaign to destroy my life and steal my inheritance. The casual cruelty in their tone shocked even relatives who had accepted their stories about my supposed problems, the contrast between their public personas and private attitudes impossible to dismiss or rationalize. Derek's admission that their manipulation had been planned for years, combined with Stephanie's detailed description of her affair with Tyler, created an immediate uproar that no amount of damage control could contain. Guests began talking over each other, some demanding explanations while others attempted to leave early to avoid the social catastrophe unfolding before them. The documentary evidence followed the recorded confessions, projected onto the large screen that had been set up for wedding photos and romantic montages. Bank records showing the theft of my inheritance, medical records illegally obtained through private investigation, and communication logs documenting the systematic character assassination campaign painted a comprehensive picture of fraud and manipulation. Stephanie's history with previous boyfriends, revealed through Detective Williams' investigation, demonstrated a pattern of behavior that made Derek just another victim in a series of emotional and financial cons. The sophisticated methods she had used to isolate him from friends and family while gaining access to his resources were identical to techniques she had refined through previous relationships. The evidence of Tyler and Stephanie's affair provided the final devastating blow to Derek's humiliation. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and photographic evidence of their relationship timeline showed that Derek's best man and future wife had been conducting their relationship throughout the engagement period, treating the wedding as a convenient cover for continued infidelity. Guest reactions evolved from confusion to outrage to collective action as the evidence mounted beyond any reasonable doubt. Extended family members who had been turned against me began demanding explanations from my parents, while Derek's professional colleagues realized they had been manipulated into participating in character assassination based on fabricated evidence. Tyler's public admission of his affair with Stephanie completed the destruction of any remaining credibility she might have claimed. Under pressure from the documented evidence and the hostile crowd, he confessed to the relationship and admitted his role in deceiving Derek throughout their friendship. His betrayal of both his best friend and his romantic partner revealed the moral bankruptcy that Stephanie attracted and encouraged in her associates. The marriage officiant, Reverend Matthews, questioned the validity of vows taken under such fraudulent circumstances and suggested that the legal aspects of the union needed immediate review. The contract Derek thought he was signing was based on false pretenses and criminal deception, potentially voiding any legal obligations he might have assumed. Derek's attempts to flee the reception were blocked by guests demanding explanations and extended family members seeking accountability for years of manipulation and lies. The confident manipulator who had controlled family narratives for months was reduced to stammering excuses and desperate attempts at damage control that convinced no one present. Stephanie's disappearance from the reception hall marked the beginning of her complete social exile from the community she had spent months cultivating. The society connections she had married to access would never accept someone capable of such sophisticated deception, and her reputation for manipulation would follow her wherever she attempted to rebuild her life. The family lawyer I had invited to the reception confirmed the criminal nature of the inheritance fraud and the identity theft that had supported Derek's lifestyle for the past 2 years. Legal consequences would begin immediately, with criminal charges for financial fraud and civil litigation for damages to my personal and professional reputation. The wedding that should have been the social triumph of Derek and Stephanie's manipulation campaign had become a public trial that revealed the truth about their characters and methods. Every guest, every family member, every professional contact had witnessed evidence that no amount of future lies could explain away or overcome. The legal consequences of Derek and Stephanie's fraud began unfolding within hours of their wedding reception exposure, Detective Williams having coordinated with law enforcement agencies to ensure that criminal charges could be filed immediately. The district attorney's office had been building a case based on our evidence for weeks, and the public confession we had recorded provided the final elements needed for prosecution under both financial fraud and identity theft statutes. Derek faced multiple criminal charges that carried significant prison time and financial penalties. The inheritance fraud alone constituted grand theft, while his systematic sabotage of my career opportunities qualified as criminal interference with business relationships. His use of forged documents and falsified evidence created additional charges that would follow him through the court system for years to come. Stephanie's background investigation revealed outstanding warrants in 2 other states related to similar schemes involving previous romantic targets. The pattern of behavior we had documented in our community was part of a multi-state operation that had been pursued by law enforcement agencies for several years. Her arrest at the wedding reception had provided the missing link that connected her to crimes spanning back nearly a decade. The financial restitution process began immediately, with court orders freezing Derek's assets and reversing the fraudulent inheritance transfers that had funded their lifestyle. My $50,000 share of grandmother Rose's estate was returned with interest and penalties, providing the financial foundation I needed to rebuild my life and pursue the legal remedies available for the damage they had caused. Derek's design business collapsed within days of the revelation that his professional reputation was built on stolen ideas and falsified client relationships. Industry associations revoked his memberships, professional certifications were suspended, and the clients who had worked with him began demanding audits of their projects to determine which concepts were actually his original work versus stolen intellectual property. The professional consequences extended beyond Derek's immediate business relationships into broader industry networks where his methods had been exposed and discussed. The marketing and design communities were smaller and more interconnected than he had realized, meaning that his reputation for theft and fraud would prevent him from rebuilding his career in any related field. Tyler's career as a financial advisor ended when his firm learned about his role in the inheritance fraud and his willingness to participate in systematic deception for personal benefit. The financial services industry required ethical standards that were incompatible with the character he had revealed through his participation in Derek and Stephanie's schemes. Stephanie's extended family disowned her completely when the evidence of her manipulation and fraud became public knowledge. Her parents, siblings, and relatives who had supported the wedding financially demanded restitution for money they had contributed to what they now understood was a criminal enterprise disguised as a romantic celebration. My parents faced the difficult process of rebuilding relationships with extended family members who had been turned against them through Derek's lies and manipulation. The family unity they thought they were protecting by supporting Derek had been destroyed by the revelation that their support had enabled criminal behavior and systematic abuse of their daughter. Community ostracism followed Derek and Stephanie as news of their exposure spread through social networks and professional associations. The society connections they had cultivated through marriage were immediately severed, and the social status they had pursued became a liability that marked them as dangerous associates for anyone concerned about their own reputation. Former friends like Courtney and Jessica attempted reconciliation when they realized the extent to which they had been manipulated into participating in character assassination based on fabricated evidence. Their guilt was genuine, but the damage to our relationships was too extensive for simple apologies to repair, and I had learned too much about the importance of surrounding myself with people who possessed genuine integrity. Marcus became not just an ally in my legal battles but a close friend and eventually a business partner in the design company I established using my recovered inheritance money. His experience with Derek's manipulation made him valuable in identifying and avoiding similar predators in professional relationships, while his technical skills complemented my creative abilities perfectly. Sophie's friendship emerged as one of the most positive outcomes of the entire ordeal, her courage in exposing Stephanie's affair and supporting my investigation having revealed character strengths that made her a valuable addition to my social circle. Her experience with manipulation made her an excellent judge of character and a fierce protector of the authentic relationships we both valued. The inheritance money that Derek and Stephanie had stolen to fund their wedding became the foundation for a design business that honored Grandmother Rose's intention of supporting my professional development. The irony that their theft had ultimately provided me with the resources to build a successful career felt like cosmic justice for years of systematic sabotage. Within 6 months of the wedding reception revelation, Derek was serving a prison sentence for financial fraud while Stephanie had fled the state to avoid prosecution, her whereabouts unknown but her reputation preceding her wherever she attempted to establish new relationships. The systematic manipulation that had destroyed my life for 2 years had been completely exposed and decisively defeated through careful planning and strategic revelation of truth. 6 months after Derek's wedding reception became the public trial that destroyed his life, I found myself standing in the bright, open space of Thompson Design Studios, the business I had built using Grandmother Rose's recovered inheritance and the hard-won wisdom that systematic betrayal had taught me. The morning sunlight streaming through large windows illuminated workstations where Marcus and I collaborated on projects that reflected our shared commitment to ethical business practices and authentic creative expression. The therapy sessions with Dr. Jennifer Morrison had been essential in processing the complex trauma of family betrayal and rebuilding my understanding of healthy relationship dynamics. The systematic manipulation I had experienced was a form of psychological abuse that required professional support to overcome, and the coping mechanisms I developed would serve me well in identifying and avoiding similar predators in future personal and professional relationships. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something more honest and bounded than the unconditional acceptance I had once craved from them. They understood that their support of Derek's manipulation had caused lasting damage that required consistent action rather than simple apologies to repair. Their willingness to acknowledge their mistakes and support my recovery had made limited reconciliation possible, but the naive trust one once felt was gone forever. Derek's attempts at reconciliation from prison had been unsuccessful because his letters revealed that he still viewed himself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own destruction. His inability to accept responsibility for the systematic cruelty he had inflicted made any meaningful relationship impossible, and I had learned to value my peace of mind over family expectations that no longer held power over my decisions. Stephanie had disappeared completely from our community after fleeing to avoid prosecution, though Detective Williams occasionally updated me on sightings and reports from other jurisdictions where women matching her description had attempted similar schemes. Her pattern of behavior was so consistent and sophisticated that she would likely continue targeting vulnerable men until law enforcement agencies coordinated effectively enough to hold her accountable. The support group I had established for people experiencing family manipulation and systematic betrayal had grown into a resource that helped dozens of individuals recognize and respond to similar abuse patterns. The isolation I had felt during my darkest moments was something that no one should endure alone, and creating community around shared experiences had become one of the most meaningful aspects of my recovery. Aunt Margaret had become my closest family relationship, her own experience as the family black sheep having prepared her to value authenticity over conformity in ways that made her an ideal mentor for rebuilding my life. Her small suburban home remained a sanctuary where I could process difficult emotions and plan for future challenges without fear of judgment or manipulation. The romantic relationship that developed slowly with Dr. James Mitchell, a trauma specialist who understood the psychology of family abuse, represented the kind of authentic connection I had never experienced before. Derek's manipulation taught me to question everyone's motives. James's professional background made him particularly skilled at recognizing and avoiding the red flags that I might have missed after years of normalized dysfunction. My design business had grown beyond the simple financial independence I had originally sought into a platform for supporting other creative professionals who had experienced workplace theft, intellectual property violations, and systematic career sabotage. The ethical standards Marcus and I maintained attracted clients who valued integrity and authenticity in their business relationships. The deep lesson that emerged from years of betrayal and recovery was that family loyalty cannot be demanded through guilt, manipulation, or social pressure but must be earned through consistent respect, support, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Blood relationships create opportunities for deep connection, but they do not excuse or justify abuse that would be unacceptable from strangers. The realization that sometimes walking away from toxic family dynamics is self-preservation rather than abandonment had been the most difficult but essential wisdom to accept. The cultural pressure to maintain family relationships regardless of the cost to personal health and happiness is a form of social control that enables abuse and prevents healing for people trapped in systematically dysfunctional families. True family, I had learned through building relationships with Marcus, Sophie, Aunt Margaret, and James, supports your growth, celebrates your successes, and provides comfort during failures without requiring you to minimize yourself to accommodate their insecurities or limitations. The people who truly love you want to see you flourish, not diminish yourself to make them feel more comfortable with their own stagnation. The final scene in my story of recovery and growth took place in my design studio, where Sophie had asked me to create wedding invitations for her engagement to Michael, a kind and honest man whose character had been thoroughly vetted through the friend network we had built around shared values. Designing celebrations for authentic love felt like completing a circle that had begun with Derek's fraudulent wedding and my systematic exclusion from family joy. The ending thought that had sustained me through the darkest moments of isolation and betrayal remained true as I built a new life founded on honesty and mutual respect. I learned that being excluded from toxicity isn't punishment, it's protection, and that the people who truly belong in your life will never require you to accept abuse as the price of their affection. The reflective conclusion about forgiveness versus boundaries had shaped my approach to rebuilding damaged relationships while protecting myself from future manipulation. Forgiveness was something I could offer for my own peace of mind, but it did not require me to expose myself to continued harm or to pretend that trust could be rebuilt without consistent evidence of genuine change. The open ending felt appropriate because healing from systematic betrayal is an ongoing process rather than a destination, and my willingness to consider family reconciliation remained conditional on genuine accountability and behavioral change that might never occur. The life I had built was complete and fulfilling without Derek's participation, but it remained open to authentic relationship if he ever developed the character necessary to sustain it. What would you do if your own family systematically betrayed you like Derek and Stephanie betrayed me? Have you ever experienced manipulation from people you trusted completely? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you think I was too harsh or not harsh enough in my response to their abuse. If this story resonated with your own experiences with family toxicity, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to manipulation and building authentic relationships. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve better from the people who claim to love them, and remember that choosing your peace over toxic family expectations is always a valid choice. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting others who are fighting their own battles against systematic betrayal. I hope my experience helps you recognize your own worth and demand the respect you deserve from everyone in your life, regardless of their relationship to you.